Good evening. Today is the 26th day of December 2015. Yesterday we celebrated Christmas with a full moon, the celebration of the light. And today we continue the book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Book 2, Canto 3, The Glory and the Fall of Life. As always, with our brother Alok. Today's letters from Sri Aurobindo are still in 1936. I can never be certain of newly written stuff, and he has parentheses, I mean in Savitri, until I have looked at it again after an interval. Apart from the quality of new lines, there is the combination with others in the whole, which I have modified more than anything else in my past revisions. Next letter. Allow me to point out that whatever I did in a jiffy would not be any more than provisionally final. It is not a question of making a few changes in individual lines. That is a very minor problem. The real finality only comes when all is felt as a perfect whole, no line jarring with or falling away from the level of the whole, though some may rise above it, and also all parts in their proper place, making the right harmony. It is an inner feeling that has to decide that. Unfortunately, the mind can't arrange these things. One has to wait until the absolutely right thing comes in a sort of receptive self-opening and calling down condition. Hence the months.
So in all these letters, Sri Aurobindo is also revealing to us the process of receiving the right inspiration and how we have to go further and further till the very perfect expression is found. And that applies in every field, every area of human endeavor. But in whatever we do, whether in everyday living or in the spiritual ascension, what we need, what is indispensable is the force of life. So it's so important, and that's why to conserve it, to purify it, to refine it, all these methods, basically because without the life energy, one cannot do anything in life, not only whether in outward life or in inner life, whether in the sphere of the mundane or in the sphere of the spiritual. Nothing can be attained without the power of life inside. It is in fact the power, the originating power. And that's what we find here. But first Ashupati, as he enters into these kingdoms of griefless countries, this once a star of bright remote idea or imagination's comet tale of dream. So both, he is like a star either which remains or something which flashes by, took now a close shape of reality. In the human consciousness, normally an ideal life, a state in which there is no grief, all is bliss, all is happiness, all is harmony and force, is regarded as a state of, in moments of reverie, we feel that there should be a state like that, or probably there is a state like that. But then the normal life, the ordinary life draws us out. And we end up saying, no, well, life is a mixture of all these things. But the mother would often encourage children to think of only beautiful things. Life can be beautiful, life is beautiful. And this, though ordinarily appears as something very distant, but for Ashupati, now this distant dream has become very close, very real. He is experiencing it. The gulf between dream truth, earth fact was crossed. The wonder worlds of life were dreams no more. His vision made all they unveiled its own. This is a marvelous line,
Yes.
and it opens doors to a newer understanding of everything. Even ordinarily, if we see something, its imprint, its impressions, its influence enters within us. And in a certain sense, it becomes our own. We may not realize it because we think of objects as separate objects. But I mean, look at anything for that matter. How it's interesting how the human sight also works. So it picks up basically all the energy and consciousness which is taking a form as an object, and it travels as something formless, and it impacts the brain. In the brain, the image is reconstructed, and this is a great mystery. How we see things as they are, no one knows, because in the brain you don't have. It's not like a photographic plate. There is no plate inside. So there are simply energy which flows through the eye and impacts the brain. In the brain, the image is reconstructed not only of the image of the object, but it's our impression which intervenes in between. Kind of subtle influences which are associated, likes, dislikes, attractions, repulsions, all these things together. So, in a certain sense, through sight, we take in the object and make it our own. Unfortunately, our sight is so full of ignorance that what we make as our own is not the object in its reality, but the object in its distortion, because that's how we conceive it. But Ashupati has a truth vision. So when he makes something his own, it's a truth vision which takes it. And that's why we eat not only through the mouth, as the Upanishad would put it, also through the eyes and the ears and every sense, because through that we take in reality. Food is only one medium through which we take in reality. Actually, we eat reality. That's how the Gita puts it. Brahman eats Brahman. So this is the eternal truth, but we don't know. So these are external ways through which reality is meeting reality and taking a joy in that. So here we see his vision made all they unveiled its own. This is another very interesting aspect, that his vision is unveiling things. There is a power in his sight. Their scenes, their happenings met his eyes and heart and smote them with pure loveliness and bliss. Because these are worlds of bliss. These are worlds of love and joy and charm. A breathless summit region drew his gaze, whose boundaries jutted into a sky of self and dipped towards a strange ethereal base. So life climbs through various forms and manifestations, and where does it? Ashupati is witnessing that this life is merging into a sea of self, like looking at a mountain top, huge mountain top, which is its heights are almost meeting with the sky. And when we look at from a certain point, it's hard to say where the mountain is ending and where the sky is beginning. So like that, he is witnessing this whole play of life.
But it also dips into this
Yes,
ethereal base.
yes. That also he'll reveal to us. The quintessence glowed of life's supreme delight. But what is the essence of life? It's power, force, delight. Its home is delight. From there, because that is the first star of creation. Wherever there is movement, there is life. So life, cosmos is living because cosmos is ever expanding and breathing. It's the great breath. The atom is living because within the atom there are constant, incessant movement, dynamism. Life is there as the kinetic energy. So everywhere there is life. Even in death there is life. What is it doing? It is eating up the form and disintegrating it. So life is everywhere. On a spiritual and mysterious peak, only a miracle's high transfiguring line divided life from the formless, infinite, and sheltered time against eternity. So just as from the formless, forms are created, similarly power is breathed into these forms. So in the highest peaks we have the forms of the gods, which are very plastic and subtle, and their powers are also boundless. Almost each god at that level will look as if he is absolute, because he is right there. But as we come closer and closer into hard matter, the forms are rigid and power is limited. But all around it's the play of life, right from there. So its task is to breathe power into forms. That's what it is. That's why when people say that an idol is, dead, it's another kind of spiritual ignorance. But there is nothing dead. But we can charge an idol by our faith, by our aspiration, by our will, or by certain occult knowledge. As ancient time the priest had it. So there was something called as prana pratishtha. Prana is literally, the power of life. So when an idol was made, the priest would invoke the god and establish him. So it becomes living and conscious, and it can respond to you. So it's not necessary. A stone can come alive because life is there in it. So it opens doors to, wonderful things. Out of that formless stuff, time mints his shapes. So time is the head manager. Its task is pick up that formless stuff and mints the shapes. The eternal's quiet holds the cosmic act. So when we say time is the master, no, he's only the master delegate. The master is the timeless, the eternal. He has been given the authority to work out things. But if the master intervenes, he can upset all time. Because that's why he's, Kala and Mahakala and Akal. That's how he is described sometimes, the divine, as Akal. In Sikhism, he is called as that which is beyond time. He cannot be described by time. Akal, Purush. So, the protean images of the world force. Now, here Sri Aurobindo is bringing out the truth of time, truth of life. Its origin is in the world force. Have drawn the strength to be, the will to last from a deep ocean of dynamic peace. This is all about creation. So, how creation takes place? Now, from this angle, from the angle of life. Elsewhere, he'll describe it when being plunged into nothingness. Elsewhere, he will describe it as the sacrifice of the Divine Mother. And all these are different facets of the same truth, but seen from infinite vantage points. So here he is describing from the vantage point of life on its peaks. So what does this power of life, which is submerged in the eternal, in the formless, it draws out the strength and the will. This is the power of life. This is the origin of life. From a deep ocean of dynamic peace. Inverting the spirit's apex towards life. So normally the creation we see from bottom up. This is the approach in science. And it climbs towards the peaks. But actually from the point of view of truth, creation starts from above and plunges its roots down into the inconscient. So that beautifully Sri Aurobindo describes many of these truths. She spends the plastic liberties of the one to cast in acts the dreams of her caprice. So this is infinite possibilities. So life as a whole field, it's formless. So anything can be created. So it goes about creating almost anything and everything, because everything is contained within the infinite as a possibility, including the dark and the dangerous. There is a delight even in that.
And we see this word plastic used again and again. And Mother even has a flower named plasticity.
In fact, she has given a tremendous importance to plasticity.
Very much.
She says 2 qualities required to manifest the supramental vibration. One is widening, the second is plasticity. Then she added equanimity, where you have to remain still. But widening and plasticity. In fact, they go together. Narrowness and rigidity go together, somehow or the other. And as you become wide, you become more plastic because you see many possibilities. So it's wonderful, His wisdom's call steadies her careless feet. Yet there is a wisdom which doesn't allow the play to go totally haywire. It allows a great liberty, like football. Life is playing football in space and time. Time, no limits. Space, Vast, 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 ever expanding. Goalposts are shifting. And it's playing a very, very rough game. Yet there is delight in that game. Yet there is a certain wisdom. Make sure, because it's happening in terms of time. So the play will not become too chaotic. So with every state of chaos, there runs a state of order. And it steadies the feet of life.
My mother said that life would manifest the supermental in time, but it would take millions of years.
Yes.
And she has accelerated the process within our grasp.
Yes. So beautiful. His wisdom's call steadies her careless feet. Of course, this whole paragraph, elsewhere also Sri Aurobindo has used, is an image of Shiva and Kali, which is very well celebrated in Indian thought. Kali is the world force moving, and as it moves, it pushes the past behind, destroys. She is the destructive power. And because she puts the past behind, new things will emerge. So even the gods are afraid, because when she moves, she cares for nothing. The gods come and say, we are very virtuous people, get aside. It happened here, no? And Kali came and mother had to tell her that, please hold on. If you go about rampaging, even my children will suffer. Because she doesn't care who is what. But his call steadies her feet, doesn't allow the game to become too dramatic. This experience is documented in the mother prayers and meditation, where she speaks about that on the surface is the storm, but deep inside are vast luminous expanses, and how the intervention takes place so that the play doesn't become too dramatic. Otherwise, it will be destructive. And yet sometimes that is allowed, because the wisdom sees it. All the pralayas are that. So, of course, this is at a mega scale. His timeless, still immutability. He props a dance upon a rigid base. He has become pure existence. So he also becomes matter. It's existence. So existence in time cannot, by any means, you cannot become totally chaotic. You have to steady yourself. So it's like playing football in the air and playing football on ground. There is a world of difference, because it will steady you. You can't just, even if you think you want things to happen, there is a process. His timeless, still immutability must standardize her creation's miracle. Out of the void's unseen energies, inventing the scene of a concrete universe, by his thought she has fixed its spaces. In its blind acts, she sees by flashes of his all-knowing light. So she knows about that wisdom intuitively, and thereby she goes about. So even when the play appears careless, and it does appear, because we look at things and events in a very narrow way in terms of time and space, but it's not careless. Even in most random things, there is a wisdom which is always operating, and even in the most blindest movements of life, it is there operating inside. At her will, the inscrutable supermind leans down, because its origin is in the supreme consciousness.
And I believe this is the first time that we have seen supermind thus far in Savitri.
Yes. After all tapasya is the energy of life, concentrated, energy of spiritual endeavor. So at its will, that is its possibility. Of course, the fact that it's not used that way, but he's describing in the realms of life, at her will, the inscrutable supermind leans down to guide her force that feels but cannot know. So supermind is the realm of truth vision, truth action, truth by identity. So it is that which is behind its most random movements and guides it, even though life is blind in her actions. Its breath of power controls her restless seas, and life obeys the governing idea. So these are the two things: knowledge and power, force and idea, and it's the play of that which Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us. At her will, so we read, at her will the inscrutable supermind leans down. At her will, led by a luminous immanence, the hazardous experimenting mind pushes its way through obscure possibles mid chance formations of an unknowing world. So first he speaks about the supermind. At its highest peak, this will of the divine, which has emerged as the power and will to be, it brings the supermind into the earthly play, into wherever. It brings the supermind into the play, wherever life operates. And then it also pulls the mind and directs it to create formations and forms. Our human ignorance moves towards the truth that nescience may become omniscient. Transmuted instincts shaped to divine thoughts. So beautiful these lines are. Thoughts house infallible, immortal sight, and nature climb towards God's identity. So this is our art. She creates formations. Formations are apply at every level. Physical formation, of course, and there are mental formation, there are psychological systems of thought. So all these, life power breathes life into them. They become living realities. They have a term. They last, exist for a time, influence mankind, and then they are broken and cast aside. The impulse, the mental energy inside these thought formations pushes itself towards newer thoughts, greater heights. Then they operate for a while, they are broken aside. New thought formations, new ideas, new philosophies emerge out of that. So this is how it is pushing. It's so interesting that life enters into a small idea and eventually enlarges it to become greater and greater. And we can see that take for instance democracies as they were practiced in way back time, and democracies as they've emerged now. And out of that again something new will emerge. So this is how all evolution takes place. The master, now these are very wonderful lines, and in Tantra, which is essentially worship of power, this is how the practice goes. The master of the worlds, self-made, her slave, is the executor of her fantasies. He says, yes, it doesn't matter what she is doing, because deep inside there is a wisdom which is operating, and she has got the charge to execute what is there inside. Yes. And this we see beautifully in the wonderful relation of the Lord and his Shakti, Ishvara and Ishwari, Mother and Sri Aurobindo. As a child I had read many stories of this kind, of the Lord and his Shakti. But first time I understood it with clarity when I read about Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And see how it happens. Look at Sita's action from the Ramayana. Sita apparently, is seemingly in a moment drawn by a golden deer. Now Sita is the world mother. Why should she take a fancy to golden deer? Is not she supposed to be beyond Maya and not be attracted and attached? But it's a fancy. She takes a fancy. And Rama, after an initial thing, says, okay, I'll go after the golden deer. Now, okay, she has taken a fancy, but he should have put his foot down. No, I won't. You are being misled. But he goes after the fancy. And we know that from that point, the story takes a different turn. Now, Sita ends up in Ravana's Lanka. And what happens now? Rama marches into Lanka. Now, look at that fanciful moment in Ramayana. Even in ignorance, when the divine Shakti acts, there is a tremendous plan which only over a period of time unfolds itself. If Sita was not drawn or attracted towards this fanciful deer, life would have been very nice for Rama and Sita, but no Ramayana. Ravana would have continued to reign in Lanka and Rama in Ayodhya. She goes into the darkness and draws Rama, the Lord of the worlds, into the darkness, crying, Sita, 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 where are you? Searching for Sita, he ends up into the home of the Asura, only to destroy him. So this is how the world power works. And if we don't see that vastness of the play, then we can easily get misguided and wonder why this is happening. What is this happening?
It takes us back to Book 1, Canto 4.
Yes, the secret knowledge.
The secret knowledge. Yes.
So many stories of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Whenever the mother would say something, Sri Aurobindo will okay it. It was a sanction. And whenever people appealed to Sri Aurobindo, he would not change the decision. Mother could change the decision.
Yes.
But Sri Aurobindo would accept whatever mother had said.
Yes.
And there are many interesting stories about it. And how Sri Aurobindo was concerned about everything of the mother.
Yes.
Even including when he is the silent support behind. But the whole play is managed by her. If she said yes, it was yes. There is a very interesting story, Chote Narayanji. Some of us may have heard about him.
Yes.
He told me that he wrote a biography of Sri Aurobindo, but before its publication, it went to, while Sri Aurobindo is in the physical body, it was taken to Sri Aurobindo by someone because the person said it's very inspiring, it's wonderful and should be published. So the person came back and said, Sri Aurobindo held it in his hands and then he kept his Himalayan silence. He didn't say yes, didn't say no. So he took it that Sri Aurobindo doesn't want it to be published. He said, all right, kept aside. They were the sadhaks, not.
Yes.
Then after many years, this issue came up again about this book being published. He said, no, the Lord has said no, so I will not publish it. He said, okay, what if I ask the mother? He said, Chotnarayanji, the story he himself told me. He said, you can ask the mother, but it will be the same decision. It cannot be that Sri Aurobindo says one thing and the mother will say another thing. But when he went to ask the mother, mother said yes. So now he was in a dilemma. And a doubt crossed his mind. How could mother say yes to something which Sri Aurobindo has said no?
But he didn't say no.
He didn't say no. That was the whole catch. But he took it as no. And with this doubt, he slept. And he says he had this occult faculty and he saw a wonderful vision in which he saw Sri Aurobindo is sitting with a whole soup. There is in front of him a whole big handi in which soup is there, bowl in which soup is there. And he calls Chote Narayan, says, come here. He says, yes. He says, this is a very nice soup you have prepared. Go and distribute it to the world. So, but Chote Narayan, even in the dream, he had a very good sense of humor.
Yes, he did.
So he says, but Lord, how can I distribute it unless you have tasted it? Then only it will be a prasad. And Sri Aurobindo dips his finger inside and tastes it. And says, now you give it. And that book, it's, unfortunately in Hindi. But I have not read a more amazing biography of Sri Aurobindo.
I see.
So I wish someday somebody translates it into English, probably, those who have read it. It's a totally inspired biography. It starts from the time when, Sri Aurobindo's moment of birth. And it's not like a scholarly thing. But he creates that sense of the divine coming to earth without using those terms. It's something amazing. So, how the relation between the Ishvara and the Shakti. Wherever she goes, when she says yes, the Lord's yes is there anyways. It accompanies. So we have...
all of you are here, find the person to translate it.
Well, honestly, I can do it, but I wish one day I have the time because in Chutnarayanji at one point wanted. He asked you. So I don't know. Maybe let's see if time comes because it's really amazing, very inspiring. The master of the worlds, self-made her slave, is the executor of her fantasies. This also, this is used in Tantra. And this is a whole Vaishnava Tantra and this great writer Jayadev, He has immortalized it with his pen when he shows the relation of Krishna and Radha in reverse. Normally, Radha is shown as surrendering herself to Krishna. But Jayadev shows Krishna as surrendered to Radha. Radha is sitting and he has put his knees upon her, his head upon her knees. And there is a very nice episode where Radha is not happy when Krishna is late. And Krishna says, I seek your forgiveness. I touch your feet, forgive me. Now, those unchaste minds will see in it nothing but carnal love. But it's not carnal love. Sri Aurobindo has said the love of Radha and Krishna is the love of the soul and the divine. And the love of the Supreme and His Shakti. It's not carnal love at all. That's because we are full of carnality, so we see carnality everywhere. That's our problem, not the problem of the great mystic poets. But it's very profound. So here we see this, that Master has made himself her slave, self-made. She has not asked him to be her slave. She has canalized the seas of omnipotence. She has limited by her laws the illimitable. So and he accepts the play and the conditions and says, I'll play by those conditions. The immortal bound himself to do her works. He labors at the tasks her ignorance sets, hidden in the cape of our mortality. That's why we see Sri Aurobindo writing Savitri again and again. He's the divine, omnipotent. But he must establish something on earth, not by a freak miracle, but change the laws of earth. So every time he pours a new energy, a greater form of inspiration, and it comes in contact with the earth consciousness undergoes a change. So he has to accept the hard conditions of the play and not do some arbitrary miracles as, the divine is omnipotent, so he will do anything with a magic wand. He could do it, as is seen in the story of Kiki, where she makes her come alive.
Yes.
But he would not do it, because if he does it often, it will interfere with the evolutionary play. It's a whole story of evolution. Otherwise, it will make no sense at all. As he said to Nirodha, that the divine is not a freak playing in a puppet play with marionettes. That's not what he is doing. It's an evolutionary journey. So we become ready and he pours. We become ready, he pours. Or rather, he pours and we become ready. Step by step and stage by stage, we must ascend. And all these steps and stages are marked out by the life force. The worlds, the forms her goddess fancy makes have lost their origin on unseen heights. They all start from there. And all these forms slowly, like what Kali would be in the highest planes, would be very different from Kali on the vital plane. Would be very different from Kali on the material plane. On material plane, she becomes like, goddess of various diseases. There are people who pray to some sorts of Kali.
Oh, yes.
Even she can be a very... because even diseases are disintegrating forces. So even there, Mother Kali. But she is not that Kali who is on the peaks. I remember as a child, we used to pray to one Shitla Mata. So for oblivious of the fact that smallpox and chicken pox, there are so many treatments, we used to pray to Shitla Mata that we should not get, these poxes. And I used to be very annoyed. It used to be a stone. I would rebel. What is this kind of superstition that you have to pray to, a stone? And but that's how. She was formless, dark like stone. Now I understand the symbol. At that point, I would say at least have a good face, What kind of goddess she is. And now I understand it's really like a stone. It's in matter. Her energy is bound in matter. The strange part is that I actually ended up getting one of these poxes. I am not attributing it to the absence of prayer. So I ended up actually having a pox. But of course the divine is infinite and the grace is infinite. So Divine Mother must have seen my child is meddling with things and saved. But this is how that power which is on the heights, it has lost its origin. But it's from that it derives, even in its lowest forms. Even the worm derives power from the same source. It is the same light which enters into the mud and deep inside and gives warmth even to the slumbering snake. So that's how it is. So it is lost on the heights. And yet, even severed, strained from their timeless source, even deformed, obscure, accursed, and fallen, since even fall has its perverted joy. All kinds of delight it must experience, including the delight of bungee jumping. Everything originated from the divine. That's why we should not blame the modern generation for doing bungee jumping. Lord started this whole problem. The great fall, attracted by a contrary phase. That is how he describes. Attracted by a shadow in the deeps. So the soul said, let's jump. So it has its joy. Imagine, even that has its joy. How Sri Aurobindo is bringing these truths. And nothing she leaves out her that serves delight. All forms of delight. There is in Ahana we have a description of the Divine Mother at various levels. At its highest height she is dawn, the bringer of light. And at the lowest he describes, she is Yakshani digging in the bowels of the earth. She is Rakshasi, gnashing her giant teeth. Is the same divine who is at there, the supreme power in all her glory, the most beautiful of the beauty, the essence of beauty. And here in the darkness, she is an ignorant, blind, laboring force, slaying all that is. But it's the same power. So he brings that vision to us. These two can to the peaks revert or hear. That's why they have a hope. There is hope for everyone because it's deep inside the same power. And who knows at what point of time this ignorant laboring power can get converted. It's in Mahabharata story, there are some very interesting conversions. Both fall and conversions. Fall is the story of Karna, fallen from grace. Son of sun, that consciousness, and eventually ends up in the mud. But there is another story where a lady, Rakshasi, born a Rakshasi, Hidimba, by the power of love that she has for Bhima, one of the sons of Kunti, true love, pure love, she is exalted to what heights that her son is immortalized as not only a valiant warrior but one who sacrificed himself no less than Abhimanyu. It's just because he is a Rakshasa, so nobody talks much about him, but he very consciously and willingly enters knowing that he is going to die, and he is a Rakshasa, one of the glorious conversions. Why? Because his mother had a very, very pure and true love. Only for 1 year Bhima stays with her and walks away, or maybe less than that. But she loves him all her life. So this power of love which can transmute even a dark fallen energy, that's what is shown. And here Sri Aurobindo is assuring us, these two can to the peaks revert or hear, cut out the sentence of the spirit's fall, recover their forfeited divinity. So this is a wonderful vision worth meditating upon, that everything is divine. Even in fallen state, there is the essence of divinity inside it. And therefore, any time it can recover its divinity. Again, the story of Ahilya, where she has fallen from grace, but recovers her divinity at the touch of Lord Rama. So any time, even in what appears to us as mechanical, jad, the blind, obscure forms, it can recover its lost divinity and forfeited divinity. This is, of course, referring to what is regarded in the Vedas as Purvadeva. Those who were the gods who lost their godhood stature and became the darkened beings. Satan, Lucifer, and of course the mother speaks about the 4 great emanations which become the 4 asuras. And Sri Aurobindo in one of the letters says, to return them back, to convert them and return them back to their original status is one of my works. Is one of his works he has undertaken, because they were fallen angels in revolt. And that's why in Savitri we have those lines towards the end. Not only the white gods, but even the dark gods who leapt in revolt, they too are safe. A mother's arms desires her rebel sons.
Yes.
So this is because now he is describing the Divine Mother as the world force, but in an impersonal universality. At once caught in an eternal vision's sweep, he saw her pride and splendor of high-born zones and her regions crouching in the nether deeps. So in one Sri Pashupati is seeing this whole vast kingdom of life. On one side, jutting into a sky of self. On the other side, plunging into the nether deeps. And yet he is seeing the same power which is laboring in all. In the gods, in the human, in the titan, in the worm. The same power. What a vision it must be. This is oneness. Above was a monarchy of unfallen self, those great gods. Beneath was the gloomy trance of the abyss. This is one kind. See, every line of Sri Aurobindo reveals so many things. People talk about trance. Sometimes they go into deep sleep and they call it trance. Sometimes in a tamasic state and this is samadhi. They come out all listless, tired. Just because we become unconscious of the outer world doesn't mean that it is samadhi. But people believe that sometimes, 2 hours sitting in a state, but totally gone down. But all is her play. So here he is saying, beneath was the gloomy trance of the abyss, an opposite pole or dim antipodes. There were vasts of the glory of life's absolutes. All laughed in a safe immortality and an eternal childhood of the soul, filled with wonder, without any shame or guilt, full of sweetness, full of joy, so that he sees on top. Before darkness came and pain and grief were born, where all could dare to be themselves and one. What a line this is. We can't be ourselves in this world. It's covered with so much falsehood. So we, even if we want, first of all, we don't even know who we are and what we are here for. And then if we discover it, it's not easy to become one. The rishis who became like that, they were often said that, look, you have your ashram outside, don't meddle in society. Society is by certain dharmas. So sannyasi became the ideal because he was living in a vast liberty of the one. It's very difficult for human consciousness to comprehend that. So here we have, before darkness came and pain and grief were born, where all could dare to be themselves and one. And wisdom played in sinless innocence. This is the story of the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve are playing in sinless innocence. So later on this, of course they were bitten by the urge for knowledge and must complete the whole curve. But see, this sense of sin, guilt, shame, hiding things, deception, all this comes later into the play. Before mind comes into the play, there is no such feeling. I mean, if you look at the animal creation in its simplicity, or even the tribals in their simplicity, they live without that. So there is a state of consciousness which at one point early humanity did embody, and Mother speaks of that. It was a very beautiful, charming and harmonious humanity where the sense of sin was not there. So sinless innocence, it reflected something of that. With naked freedom in truth's happy sun. So that's why, very often we mistake nudity for vulgarity. All nudity is not vulgar. And Nalini Dai has written a very beautiful article on this. The vulgar and the obscene. Vulgarity can be fully clothed, even in gentlemanly dressed like a Hitler. And yet it can be vulgar. Vulgarity can be very ostentatious in its show, with all kinds of jewels and all this. Whereas there can be a beauty in sheer nudity, but it's a different kind, different state. And human beings have tried to capture it sometimes. So they get glimpses from that state and try to capture it. So, there were worlds of a laughter and dreadful irony. This is totally defies all description. Dreadful irony. There were fields of her taste of toil and strife and tears. Her head lay on the breast of amorous death. Sleep imitated a while extinction's peace. Everything she can create. amorous death. She is drawn to death. It's interesting, There is a story in the Purana where death dies. It's very interesting. Yeah. Have you ever thought that death is living? How does it live? It's the power of life that gives life to death. Otherwise, death would be dead. So, death is given a task by life, and this Sri Aurobindo reveals several places. Yeah. And the mother says, there is nothing like death. Death is itself an agent of life.
And at the end, Savitri
Yes.
says, he was eaten by light.
Eaten by light. That's it. Eaten by light. It has been given a dreadful form and shape for a certain work. And this eaten by light is the story which we see in one of the Puranas where Kartikeya is representative of the universal fire, Vaishwanar. So he kills death. So then all the gods say this is a problem. If death dies, there will be chaos. We need this fellow, please let him come alive. So he is brought back alive by Shiva. So this is very interesting, that even death lives at the mercy of life. It is just created. So life lies on the breast, amorous death. Sometimes he takes a fancy, okay, death, you take me. And the light of God she has parted from his dark. It's one, but yet for the sake of the play she creates these different fields. This is very beautiful in the ocean. We will see. Today it was there, during the storm it was there, that up to a point the ocean is very muddy and then it becomes green. Not all days we can see it. When I was seeing it, I was reminded of this line, the light of God she has parted from a dark. Actually it's the one ocean. Or there are places in Cape Town, when we go to that, we can see the three oceans meet, even in India, where we can see the three oceans meet. If you go down to Kanyakumari or probably still lower, where you can see the three oceans actually meeting, and distinct oceans. Very interesting. So, but it's one ocean. So she has created, because for a play, okay, this is the dark side, this is the bright side, let's have a play. Like in chess, you have two different pieces, otherwise there will be no play. You can't play white against white. So for the play you need. So she has created the antipodes, the bright and the dark, and you change the pieces. The light of God she has parted from his dark to test the savor of bare opposites. This too is a joy, for the sake of joy she creates. Here mingling, now comes, these marvelous lines. This is about the typal worlds of life. So there are worlds of utter darkness, there are worlds of glory of life, but here in human heart, and that's where the problem comes, both come together. And this is the big challenge. Here mingling in man's heart, their tones and hues have woven his being's mutable design. His life a forward rippling stream in time, his nature's constant fixed mobility. He is ever changing, yet looks like ever the same. Constant fixed mobility. And this in human beings it's mixed. So that's why I see how things have evolved. In the days of Rama, the Asura was in Lanka and the gods were in Ayodhya. Simple. In Krishna's age, the Asuras and the gods were in the same family. Cousins. In Sri Aurobindo's age, the Asura and the gods are in the same human being. So, now we can't kill. We have to change. There is no other choice. So, it is like, an evolution taking place. So, here mingling in man's heart, their tones and hues. All these worlds of life, put something of them in the human being and say, now you have this challenging task of putting us in the right places and reconciling and transforming whatever else. And what a task. That's why at one level human beings have this greatness and God takes so kindly to us. His soul a moving picture's changeful film. His cosmos chaos of personality. The whole cosmos pours itself into a human being. That's why there is chaos. That's why God is so kind to us. Because He knows what we are. He knows what a deadly task has been given to us. And that's why the grace is infinite with humans. We have to just open a little. The Divine Mother understands us because she knows the play of nature. Human beings may not, but she knows. The grand creatrix with a cryptic touch has turned to pathos and power, being self-dream, made a passion play of its fathomless mystery. The great drama of life.
Can end there.
Yes, we will end here.